back to Resistance Chicks, where your hosts been... Okay, I haven't been here. You were here yesterday. No, 2 days ago. I have not been here in a really long time, and I've missed you. Anyway, we're your hosts, Leah and Michelle. Today's the 30th of August, 2019. I didn't even watch Leah's show. I don't know what all she covered. A lot happened.
So let me go on to this, because we haven't talked about this enough, mostly because I'm terrified of it and there's nothing I can do about it.
Okay.
And it is this 5G technology, which is radiating people, causing cancer. It is incredibly dangerous, and Trump wants it, and it's already in the White House, and I find it, you know what, my internet's fast enough. I don't need 5G. Like, I seriously can bring up any page, any video I want. And I don't want it faster. Well, I don't need it to be faster.
Well, we're not sitting here going...
Well, we're on Wi-Fi. We're on Wi-Fi. We're talking about your cell phones, but yeah.
What I'm saying is, we don't have dial-up anymore. It's fast enough. Anything beyond dial-up is fast enough.
Right, exactly. So he says
it's
the
ridiculous.
backbone of the future of technology is 5G. Bannon said in an interview with Epoch Times, and this Huawei company is vying for control of 5G. And so the fifth generation of cellular mobile communications. Right now, the path that Huawei is taking as a front for the PLA, the People's Liberation Army of China, is to basically take over the networks and the components throughout the world. They want to own 5G, be in charge of 5G, and then they're in charge of everything.
Right.
If we allow this to happen for even a couple more years, Huawei is going to control basically the communication systems of the West, and therefore be able to control the West. Under the laws in communist China, companies have to cooperate with Chinese authorities and grant access to data when asked. You know that if you go to China, you have to give them all of your, and that's what you're talking about, intellectual property. Trump's like, you're taking our intellectual property. Literally, they're like, hey, you want to manufacture this car in China? Well, give us the plans. Oh, look, we come up with a car. You know, they take your technology.
Well, they don't just do it with cars. They do it with everything.
It's all down to the littlest things. Down to China was making knockoff solar eclipse glasses that would damage your eyes. And you had to look for the USA-made ones.
Right.
And it looked exactly the same. Have highlighted the fact that Huawei equipment could be used by Beijing to engage in espionage or disrupt communication networks. You know they'd be listening in to everything. Huawei has a high-tech methodology to basically have domination over the world. It now operates in more than 170 countries across the globe and serves more than 30 billion people. The threat of Huawei is spotlighted in a new film, Claws of the Red Dragon, which was executive produced by Steve Bannon. The plot of the film, which hopefully we'll watch here, the plot of the film was largely inspired by the 2018 arrest of the chief financial officer of Huawei, Meng Wanzhou, who is also the daughter of Huawei's founder. In the indictments, U.S. prosecutors charged Huawei with stealing trade secrets from T-Mobile, violating sanctions against Iran. The film calls attention to the intimate relationship between telecom giant Huawei and the Communist China Party, and highlights the regime's hegemonic ambitions. People will be shocked when they see it, Bannon said of this 54-minute film, which will be released in September. So it's not out yet. Huawei, Bannon said, isn't a fine corporate citizen, as they would have people believe. Instead, it's a branch of the People's Liberation Army. It's an intelligence branch. Bannon, a former executive chairman of Breitbart, you've been covering this for a while. In the film, Bannon said will cause a lot of controversy. It's going to cause a lot of conversation. That's what we want. The indictments of Meng and Huawei speak of decades-long abuses. So why did both the Bush, Sarah trailer, and the Obama administration kind of look the other way while investigators? It's called. Let's see. The movie's called Claws of the Red Dragon. Let's see. Why do people look the other way while investigators at the Department of Justice and other places were pursuing this? Every administration, every president of both political parties, he said, has folded when it came to the spotlight with the Chinese and allowed the Chinese Communist regime to freely renege on its promises. In Bannon's view, the crux of the problem was the marriage of corporate America with the CCP. Here's the analogy I make. Wall Street is the investor relations department for the Chinese Communist Party because they're the ones that raise capital for them. The corporations are the lobbyists. The tragedy and the crime, in Bannon's view, are the corporate elites who have knowingly chosen to look the other way in the face of egregious human rights abuses in China. They know all of it, and they don't care. You know, if you went over there and you're like, oh, they totally are harvesting organs. Like, okay. Or,
no. Harvesting organs isn't a big deal.
It's the
it's the way that they do it. They keep prisoners alive that are on death row just so they can kill them at the perfect time to harvest their organs.
Well, it's not, and then there's a social credit score, and then they, one child and now 2-child policy, and they have no moral authority. They have totally bought into a system that's completely corrupt, and they know all about it. Yet they mock Donald Trump and say, "Ooh, he's a barbarian. He's a wild man. He's a disruptor of the system." In the end, Bannon said the blood and the guilt is in their hands because they sought to profit from a close relationship with a Chinese ruling regime, and it's the working men and women in the middle class of this country who have paid the price, and that's why Donald Trump won, because the jobs, and I'm not a big job person. I want you to own your own business. I want you to be an entrepreneur, but we can't do that, so we get back to gold and silver to make it right. And so if you're going to, there's different levels, and the worst level is to say, I don't even have a job because my job is over in China. Like, that's like the ultimate of the worst, right? Like, let's get everything back here, and then maybe we can have more entrepreneurs. We can get back to the gold standards, so the value of your work is actually worth something. Wall Street and the corporate elites are going to be held accountable by history for what went on in this time and place and what went on in China. And they knew about it and looked the other way. Donald Trump, the central reason he's president is this. He said we have to return to America to her former greatness. We have to make America great again. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to confront the CCP. Wall Street has shipped those jobs over there, and I'm going to bring them back. In Bannon's view, Trump is the first president to take a strong stance against the Chinese Communist regime. On August 23rd, Trump raised existing tariffs even higher and ordered U.S. companies to exit China. Did you guys? I think I told you guys that we talked about that. Trump orders people, you leave China now. Come on, guys. That was a pep talk. There's obviously no government force behind it, but he does actually have government force to make that happen.
Right, but he's not using it right now.
Right. After Beijing announced retaliatory tariffs on $75 billion of U.S. goods, it's a really hard time right now for U.S. farmers, and I'm not particularly soft-hearted, although they do vote, Republican or conservative. The farms have gotten to be corporate, and they're just soybeans and corn, and soybeans and corn, and we have this system, and it's soybeans and corn, and soybeans and corn, and China buys it, and we sell it, and we just what we do, and you know what? That's not even the right system to even be protecting.
Right.
It's
all monoculture.
Right. He does have emergency powers, so he can make things happen. Let's see. Many people don't have a clear understanding of the ruling Chinese regime. Advocates of free trade, in Bannon's view, are well-intentioned, but they often have this kind of soft, gauzy notion that they read in Adam Smith and about free trade, not understanding that you have a gangster organization that runs a totalitarian mercantilist state. It's not actually free capitalism. It's certainly not for them in China.
Right.
For decades, Americans were made to believe a lie, namely that once China entered the World Trade Organization, received most favored nation status, became wealthier, and started to develop a middle class, then China would gradually be more democratic. That's not happening. We've seen the exact opposite. In the past 20 years, the Chinese Communist Party has gotten more radical. Why is that? Because they have a totalitarian system where the elite essentially skims the money off the top. You go to Belgravia, you go to the West End of London, a lot of that is Chinese money, and not from Chinese people, but from hardworking old 100 names that breaks his back every day in a factory for $1 a day. That's from the elites and the CCP that have skimmed the money off the top of the slave labor in China, money laundered it through banks and investment banks, and bought real estate and hard assets in the West. The CCP is the Frankenstein monster created by the elites in the West. The capital provided by the elites in the West, and technology that's provided by the elites in the West. And
so hang on, because I talk about this a lot, and I don't know why I have it in my mind that you've disagreed with me, because I know that you don't. The Chinese, and it's not just the Chinese, there are a lot of foreign powers, but especially the Chinese are buying real estate here in the United States.
No, they do.
And legit hard assets. So it's not just enough for us to say they own Hollywood, which they do.
Right.
Okay. But they are buying hard assets. They are buying land. They are buying real estate.
We should take it all back. Like, I think as a government, this is the United States. I think that Chinese person should own land here.
Exactly.
No, I don't think they should be allowed to own land here. I think we should just take it all back. And that's my version of it, Make America Great Again. Some people would say, well, that's the communists, that you would take property. I said, no, you did it wrongfully. You did it illegally. This belongs to U.S. citizens. I'm sorry. Goodbye.
Yeah.
But
now, I do have this trailer if you want me to play it.
I will, but I think we're going to segue right here into Hong Kong. So I'm going to play that in a second, but I want to make this segue. He says the defining event, I believe, in the first half of the 21st century is the freedom of the Chinese people. I think the freedom of China starts with Hong Kong, and I think it's going to spread from there. The people in Hong Kong are among the most orderly and decent folks on earth. I mean, if you know, they're very polite. Yeah. They're always taught to be nice and polite. Right. And, you know, Chinese is blank blank, and I just, no, and don't F this, and don't be violent. We try not to be violent, but we just want our freedom. You know, it's they're trying to, like, find this perfect, and, I've given them a hard time, but gloves are off, man. You're going against China. The people in Hong Kong are among the most orderly and decent folks on earth. If you've ever been there, it's basically a rock island with no resources. That the grit and the determination of the Chinese people, coupled with English common law, has created the third greatest capital market in the world. There are different things in DNA, and Asian people tend to have a different. Doesn't mean they're better people, but they do. They have a different intellect. It's a higher intellect. They just say Asians have a higher. They're just able to.
Well, they play the violin and the piano, and the way that they can work with technology.
And it doesn't mean it's better. You can do it for evil too. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
I agree.
They just have more like Einstein's. Is what I'm saying.
Right.
Historically, Hong Kongers have tended to be apolitical and business focused. In Bannon's view, it doesn't mean they're moral focused, by the way. Yet now millions of Hong Kongers have flooded the streets over the past few weeks to protest an extradition bill, and we talked about this. And we're gonna segue into that because we're gonna talk about the fact that China has started to put its foot down, and Donald Trump, I think, is watching on the sidelines because he made a deal with Chinese Communist Party to raise the stock markets, and Trump is he's walking this really fine line because he knows that he's got to back and support the freedom of Hong Kong, but he also knows that China is a major player in our economy, and if we don't have China, but see, China doesn't have us, so it's a tricky thing. But go ahead and play the trailer here, and we'll move on to Hong Kong a little bit.
Are claiming is a lie. We are in an uncomfortable position because we have an extradition treaty with the Americans.
我这里有几个可以诬告他们在中国实施间谍活动的加拿大人的名单。
I think the entire U.S. government is fed up with China going afoul of international laws.
They just arbitrarily sentenced a Canadian to death. There's no telling where this retaliation will end.
You need to be straight with me, because if I'm going to survive in here, I need the truth.
It's a mess, Michael. I'm not sure how it's going to be fixed or when.
It's faster, easier, and ultimately cheaper to achieve power through cyber technology than it is to build traditional military weapons. In short, Washington is their Trojan horse.
I think you should take the lead on this story.
This is a crazy accusation by countries who are jealous of our success.
Your Honor, Ms. Feng is an extremely wealthy woman. The Crown is asking that her bail be denied.
Ms. Feng, can I ask you a few questions? Ms. Feng.
Those are some key talking points and a list of possible Canadian journalists or spin doctors who also have useful political connections.
I'm told that Jamie is your girlfriend.
We've been together for a while.
If editors allow that truth to be published, the legal system operates without interference. Full stop.
Jane, these are serious people, and they know everything about you and your family.
Hello? 什么？什么时候？为什么？
So that looks really, really good, and I'm really proud of Steve Bannon for putting that together because that is awesome, and it's really necessary. When they talk about the Cold War, again, I'm going to be completely honest, and I don't mind. My education, even my homeschool education, kind of failed me there. And the reason why they called it the Cold War is because it wasn't a war that could be tangibly fought. And we are entering into another, I think we're already there. Into another Cold War era, and I think it just hasn't been given a name and it hasn't been publicly acknowledged.
Right. So this is a little clip from PragerU about Hong Kong here, and we have. I think I need to turn my thing back on, just to kind of give you an idea. Again, it's kind of important to know what's going on. And then I'm going to talk about how China is cracking down. They're starting to arrest the leaders of the movement here. Whoa. That was...
Maybe turn it down to start with. No? Okay.
Hong Kong is protesting China's communist government. Protesters have demonstrated and clashed with police in a push against increasing government control. You can read it.
They also sang the U.S. national anthem and waved U.S. flags, demonstrating their fight for freedom. In June, millions protested a bill allowing China to extend surveillance into Hong Kong. The extradition bill would allow China to seek and arrest anyone living or staying in Hong Kong it deems are threats, even tourists. The Communist China regime is cracking down to remove freedoms that Hong Kong citizens have enjoyed since the British returned the nation to Chinese control in the 1990s. Hong Kong has been a long-standing beacon of freedom in Asia. Its citizens deserve to defend their freedoms against the tyranny of China's communist government.
So, we now have...
It's really scary to think about, right? So you're a tourist, and we've all known this. Like, I grew up knowing. You go to China, it's possible you're never coming home. You're going to be put into some sort of camp where your family will never hear or see from you. Somebody put drugs in your bag or whatever. What they want to be able to do is anybody that they see as a threat, even if you're a tourist in Hong Kong, they already do it in China.
Right, they do.
But now they want to be able to do it in Hong Kong, and the Hong Kongese people are like, no.
Okay, so Saturday's planned protest in Hong Kong has been canceled after the arrest of the 3 of Hong Kong's pro-democracy protest leaders Friday. Joshua Wong, Andy Chan, and Agnes Chow. They are very, very young to be giving their lives to their country. CNBC's Eunice Yoon notes that the arrests are being described on Chinese media as a crackdown on the activists who create chaos in Hong Kong. The pro-democracy activist Joshua Wong was released from jail hours after he was forcibly pushed into a car by police. Agnes Chow was released as well. Saturday's planned protest marking the 5th anniversary of the 2014 event, which sparked the Umbrella Movement, has been canceled. Bonnie Loung from the Civil Human Rights Front said, "The appeal board has just rejected our appeal. Our first principle is always to protect all the participants and make sure that no one could bear legal consequences because of participating in the protest that we organized. However, because of the appeal board's decision, we can see no way that we can keep this principle and also continue our march and protest."
Wow.
Therefore, the Civil Human Rights Front has no option but to cancel the march tomorrow. The Civil Human Rights Front would like to sincerely apologize to the public and hope you can understand what we explained and the difficulty we are facing. At the same time, we understand that the right to march and the right to protest is a human right, and it is very important to Hong Kong people. They're going to continue to apply for more marches and rallies. I think the police are using all kinds of excuses to arrest all kinds of people, including us. They arrested Joshua Wong and Agnes Chow this morning, so there is a real danger we could face the same consequences as well. We will try our best to preserve the CHRF as a legal organizer. If we do otherwise, the police may use that as an excuse to give us even more trouble in the future. It will be interesting to see who does come out and what Hong Kong, possibly Beijing authorities will do about it. Hong Kong pro-democracy activist Agnes Chow has... Okay, we're going backwards in time here.
I am kind of worried about this, though, because...
Yeah.
Anytime... See, these people are peaceful. Mm-hmm. So peaceful that they have canceled their march to protect anybody that would go.
Yeah.
So what I foresee happening is that the powers that be will send infiltrators in to make it look like a bunch of violent people showed up.
Yeah.
And then it gives these guys who are peaceful a bad name.
Yeah. So Beijing's role in directing the Hong Kong government throughout the extradition bill protests has been widely assumed. And following the arrest of the 3 protest leaders Friday morning, as well as the cancellation of Saturday's march, the long-anticipated crackdown, complete with a rotation of the People's Liberation Army we were just talking about, appears to have finally started. But in case there was any doubt left in your mind, Rodgers published a lengthy report Friday detailing the extent to which the Chinese Communist Party has directed the Hong Kong government's response to the protests. Hedge fund manager Kyle Bass noted on Twitter that the troop rotation in Hong Kong looks more like an invasion. Fortunately for them, the detained protest leaders, a group that included Joshua Wong, they have been released. Earlier this summer, Lam submitted a report to Beijing that analyzed the protesters' demands and issued a finding permanently withdrawing the extradition bill, could help placate the people and end the protest movement. But Beijing was unsurprisingly firmly opposed to this or meeting any of the protest demands.
Wow.
The Chinese central government rejected Lam's proposal to withdraw the extradition bill and ordered her not to yield to any of the protesters' demands at any time. 3 individuals with direct knowledge of the matter told Rodgers. While it comes as no surprise that China would be unwilling to show any weakness in dealing with the Hong Kong protesters, the Rodgers report for the first time offers concrete evidence of the degree of which the Chinese Communist Party is calling the shots in Hong Kong. Lam's report was prepared for an August 7th meeting in Shenzhen with the senior Chinese leadership intended to examine the feasibility of the protest movement's demands and how ascending to some of them might help restore order. Ultimately, the Chinese leadership decided not to take any action on the protesters' demands, particularly when it comes to the withdrawal bill, which Lam has said is dead but not completely withdrawn, or investigations into excessive use of force by the police. Lam's report had been submitted to the central government, so they said no to all 5 demands. The situation is far more complicated than people realize. As Rodgers pointed out, the extent of Beijing's influence strikes at the heart of Hong Kong's one country, two systems government, which promised the city a high degree of autonomy, particularly at a time when the former British colony is facing its most serious political crisis since it was returned to China in 1997. Senior pro-Beijing politician Ip Kwok Hem, a member of Hong Kong's ruling executive council, told Rodgers that if the central government won't allow something, you can't do it. A senior businessman who attended the
Shenzhen. It's just they say Shenzhen.
Meeting has met with Lam recently, said her hands are tied and Beijing won't let her withdraw the bill. At the meeting, this head of the Hong Kong MAO said in public remarks that if the unrest persisted, the central government would intervene.
So for those of you that don't understand, and I didn't quite understand it until we started covering it, when Hong Kong was given back to China, there were safeguards that were supposedly put in place so that Hong Kong wouldn't have to be swept into communist China. They were going to be allowed to remain like kind of autonomous and a little bit independent because they were already westernized. And if China, and they already have, and that's what they're trying to do, but if they betray this treaty that was kind of put into play when Hong Kong was handed back over to China from Great Britain, then the world could step in. But Great Britain has the responsibility to do so.
This is all about money. It's all about power. Right? Because Hong Kong is the 3rd largest city economy in the world. Right. And China wants to be able to arrest people and just take whoever they want, take their money and take everything. Because when you've arrested somebody in China, you can have everything. You can take all their stuff. So they look at it as I think that the ultimate goal of a communist spirit is expansion. It's never enough. Right. It's never, ever enough.
It's like a drug. Until then, be safe out there. I want to end it like Lynette Zhang does on ITM Trading. Remember that shields are made of metal and not paper or promises. That's how she always ends her shows. But remember, it's not just a conspiracy theory.
If it's the truth.
We love you. God loves you.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Patriot Gallery's been doing a great job breaking things up.
Yes, thank you, Patriot
segments if
Gallery.
you want to share some of these videos that you think are important.
Speaking of Patriot Gallery, she's always got new blogs out on Resistance Chicks blogspot.com. You can find us on Isaiah58ministries.blogspot.com, resistancechicks.com. You can go there to find the latest of what we've been doing here. So, all right, you guys, we love you, and we'll see you Sunday.
God bless.
I was cold all alone.